That's the old town.
It's so incredible that his men were
Oh, good.
actually. Do you need any more help?
I think that's everything. Fisher's son could be there, right?
Yeah.
That was just up in the last
Very proud of him. Very proud.
Dear veterans, dear friends, it is an honor and a pleasure to be with you today to pay tribute to Mr. John Gojmerac, who fought for the freedom of France and the freedom of Europe during World War II. And I'm very grateful to be here today to be able to organize this ceremony. I have flown from New York City for this ceremony, and this is the least I could do considering everything you have done for our country. And as Bertrand said, you are going to receive the highest medal, the highest award of the French Republic. This award was created more than 220 years ago by Emperor Napoleon, and it survived the death of Napoleon, the establishment of the Republic. It is still the most prestigious award in the French Republic, and one of the awards which is known worldwide, the French Legion of Honor. Mr. Gojmerac, you were at the very front lines of the war, sometimes acting as a scout, advancing ahead of your units to probe for enemy activities, sometimes wielding a weapon in direct combat. You have received many medals for your service and your bravery, such as the Silver Stars for gallantry in action, the Purple Heart, and the Combat Infantry Badge. But you had never received the Legion of Honor. This is why I'm here today. Today, it is France's turn to salute you. Mr. Gojmerac, France is eternally grateful for what you and your fellow soldiers did for our country. Long live France, long live the USA, and long live the alliance between our two countries. Thank you very much. John Gojmerac, au nom du président de la République et en vertu des pouvoirs qui nous sont conférés, nous vous faisons chevalier dans l'ordre national de la Légion d'honneur. Congratulations.
Not only for myself, but also the men.
Sure.
That didn't come home.
Thank you. Thank you.
What you probably didn't realize was the results of your efforts helped decide the fate of a country and its people. It is so noble to have the country of France recognize those efforts and to thank you for them. You never talked much about the war while I was growing up, yet I always hold an incredible pride inside, knowing that my dad fought in World War II. There were times I wanted to tell the world what my dad did. Every time I was at a parade and saw an American flag go by, I would tear up thinking of you and what you did. I was always so incredibly proud of you. You have always been silent, strong, and steadfast, a man who truly said what he meant and meant what he said. Growing up, me and my 3 siblings all had so much respect for you, and we still do, of course. You will always be our hero, and it's wonderful to see you recognized as one today.
What to say about my dad? First, congratulations, Dad, on this very well-deserved honor. Thank you to Tina and Eric for bringing this honor to my father. Appreciate your efforts. My dad is strong, yet he's a very humble man. He is generous to others, yet very frugal with himself. He values education and hard work and would tell me make something of yourself. These words have ran through my mind time and time again throughout my life. His love for my mother, his children, and his family, his sense of integrity and responsibility are at his very core. I have always been very proud of my father, and now I have another reason to be proud of him. I love you, Dad, and am so very proud to be your daughter. Congratulations.
Okay. Whew. We are all so proud of you, Pa, but one of the proudest people is not here with us right now, but he is watching. My brother Eric. And he wanted to say a few words about you. So I'm going to try to do my best. I wanted to say a few words about Pa, someone I have been very close to my entire life, and one of the finest embodiments of what it means to be true to your moral compass and values, especially in the most trying times. The kind of man who fought on the front lines of some of the hardest battles of the largest war in history, and then went on to lead an entirely new life afterwards, scarcely mentioning it at all. The kind of man who has only the highest respect from fellow Army veterans, especially if asked about his Silver Star. But Pa never put his medals on display. Instead, he kept them in a small cardboard box in the middle drawer of his dresser. When I was little, as long as I'd behaved, he would retrieve them and lay them on the bed. Each summer, I would spend hours admiring them and paging through the 3rd Division book, studying the photos and imagining what it would have been like to be there with him. Looking at page after page of bullet-riddled buildings in France, he would nod and tell me that yes, he was there, then laugh a little before adding that he was too busy fighting Germans to have been in any photos. When I would ask to hear another Army story, he would often remind me that war is hell, but hearing his stories as a boy, it still seemed like an adventure to me anyway. I moved to France exactly 75 years after he was here as part of the Army of Liberation. In September 1944, John Gojmerac had just finished running through a minefield on the beaches of southern France and was fighting his way northward. And in September 2019, I suddenly found myself noticing bullet holes in the sides of buildings while on the way to the grocery store. The French government has intentionally left them as witness to the brutality of the fighting and of the heavy burden that he and his men endured. There is usually a plaque nearby that notes, Allied Liberation Bombardment, and I wonder to myself if I am retracing his actual steps. It is thanks to him that my walk to the store is even possible in a free France. When I visited the cathedral in Strasbourg, there was a plaque honoring the men of the U.S. Army that fought and died in the liberation. Pa was wounded there, and thanks to him, the Christmas market was peaceful and families strolled happily. Thanks to him and his men, the horrors of Nazi occupation came to an end. Suddenly, the photos from the Army book felt real, too real, and Pa was right. None of it was an adventure that he'd asked for. Instead, if you ask him how he feels about the war, he will simply say that he was a combat soldier and he had a job to do. He is proud of the time that he helped silence an enemy machine gun, but is equally proud of the time he was able to spare the lives of 2 enemies. It seems impossible to have dealt with it all at such a very young age, and I wonder how few men could have done the same with such honor. It is not simply that he fought in World War II, but that he did so while retaining a sense of humanity and dignity for life that I admire most. When I tell my French friends and colleagues that my grandpa is receiving the Legion of Honor, they can barely believe it. They ask me if I'm sure I'm not mistaken. But after I explain, they tell me to extend to him their deepest gratitude. Here in France, everyone knows that the Legion of Honor is the highest one can receive, and everyone immediately agrees that John Gojmerac is fully deserving of it. There is a museum in the center of Paris that I pass often, sitting high above the banks of the Seine River, dedicated to the Legion of Honor and its recipients, including many of Napoleon's best soldiers. It is a true honor to know that my grandfather is now officially one of them.
Well, he's here in spirit and in technology.
Took it upon himself to himself.
And some of them never made it work, you know. We were, the whole company lined up for an attack. And I was of course, I was one of them, you know. And as we were approaching the enemy, Germans, they opened up on us with big cannons, big guns. And the shells were exploding all around us. And I got hit. A big shell exploded close to me, knocked me on my back, and 2 shrapnels that wound up in my leg, one down here and one up here. And other guys were getting hit also. So they were asking for the medic. We had a medic with us, but just one guy. And there were 2 or 3 guys hit here, 2 medics there, and they were calling for the medic. And I was all by myself, I remember. I said to myself, there's no use waiting for the medic. I better do something myself, because I was bleeding, really bleeding bad on this wound. So I sat down, and on my belt I had a little packet like. In it, I didn't know what was in it until I opened it. It was a piece of cloth this long, all rolled up, and 2 like strings, one on each side. So I took it out and I wrapped it around my leg, this one. This one was worse than this one. This one wasn't as bad. Bleeding, but not as bad as this one. So I wrapped it around my leg myself, tied it up. And by that time, the sergeant, we had a sergeant with us. He was wounded himself. He said, all of you, he yelled, all of you guys that hear me, if you can walk, crawl, do whatever you can. Crawl to the ditch and follow the ditch out. You'll come to a tent, first aid tent. They'll take care of you. So I saw guys crawl from this side. Some were wounded in the shoulder, some in the head. I was wounded here, left leg. So I picked up my rifle, put the safety on, and I used it as like a cane, and got down to this ditch, or it was like a ditch here. And there were guys in front of me, guys behind me, and we all got down to the tent. 2 years, I believe. And without bragging, I saved few lives. I had to My job was to lead the troops in the direction of the enemy, but do it in as safely as I can. And several times I had to disagree with the sergeant of a group of soldiers that were assigned to open an area for the troops to go through. But sometimes the enemy knew or assumed that Americans would be coming to a town or woods, or whatever, and they would be prepared with machine guns, sometimes guns, or sometimes even a tank. And when we were visible to the enemy, I was in the front. I already knew where the enemy was. And I had to talk to sergeant not to attack or go into that area. We lost our cameraman. So they figured that I would be a good replacement for the cameraman. And that's when I was told to lay a telephone line from my headquarters to the headquarters of Company C, which was quite a distance. And I started to tell you this story already. I left I hooked up the wire to my captain's telephone and started to walk. Oh, there was a logging road that the guys that worked in the woods, not soldiers, but civilians, yeah. So I was told to follow that road. I was walking and walking and walking. Half of the night was already behind me, all by myself. Then I stopped. I was going to take a drink of water or something. Then, all of a sudden, there was an explosion. Oh, about, I don't know, 18 feet from me, something like that. There was a big ball of fire. Instantly, I knew what it was. It was a German hand grenade. But it missed me. But it was powerful enough to knock me on my back. And I grabbed my carbine, and I figured that they would come forward to me to finish me. They never showed up. So I kept on going. I finally, all night, and towards morning, I finally saw the stone building that was described to me in the short distance. And I knew that I was arriving at my destination. You know, sometimes a shell fell on the line and cut it. I had to go out and repair the wire. And several times I was laying on my stomach, trying to get two ends together, you know. So they had the communication from both ends. How I survived makes me stop and wonder sometimes. There's Purple Heart, Silver Star, Bronze Star, Infantry Combat Badge is this one. There's one for the invasion of southern France. Might be this one here. I don't remember them. Oh, this one here. This was given by the French government to a company in the First World War. First World War. But if you wound up in the same company, the guy that got this Corps de Guerre, that's Corps de Guerre. Any guy that's in his company wound up after him was allowed to wear this. So we were all given that in my company, this Corps de Guerre. Guys called it the rope. It looks like a rope.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is supposed to be a medal. Yeah. All these others are different things, you know. We won't go into all that.
So, did you feel honored when you received your awards?
Yeah. This one here, that one was pinned on my chest by a general. This one here. This one by a lieutenant in the hospital. After I left the army, okay, I went back to school. I went to a private school, and I finished high school. And then I could have gone to state school or a college. Yeah, I chose college. And we lived in Pittsburgh. And there was a Pittsburgh University, and engineering was one of the courses that appealed to me. But they didn't, they turned me down because I got my so-called diploma from a private school and didn't recognize that school. Name of it was, or still is, Pittsburgh Academy. So they turned me down. So I said, my second choice is a trade school. So I enrolled in a trade school to study to be a machinist. And I finished it and became a machinist. It was something that I also liked. Engineering would have been my first choice, but second one was machinist. And I had several very good jobs as a machinist. The last one was General Motors. Yeah. Wound up, in the very end, I became instructor, teaching other members in that company, General Motors. I was teaching them It isn't quite fair that only I get a medal. And I will tell the people that this decided to pin a medal on me. They got a medal pinned on me by a general. So, but this is different. Yeah. I will tell them that I am accepting this medal not only for myself, but all the guys that were with me. They didn't make it. Yeah. So many guys were with me that didn't make it.
My father, let's see. I would say my father is a genuine, down-to-earth, salt of the earth type of man. Always tried to do his job, never wanted any notoriety for it, was a very family-oriented man all my life. We lived a simple life, a good life, but he was great for saying, you know, only the necessities matter. He wasn't into frills or fuss or, you know, he was an incredible father. Like he said, he's not a drinking man, so he never went out. My parents were always home. We lived a very nice, wholesome life. And so I would say he has a lot of integrity, he has a lot of character, did what he needed to do, always tried his best. That's my dad. Scene. I remember 2 times though that speak to his character when he was merciful to the enemy. He was approaching, this was somewhere in France again, and he was approaching a town where there was a big machine gun German machine gun that had been hit. So they came to the town after that had happened, and he was coming around to this spot, and the German soldier was still alive, but badly wounded, and he was staring at my father. He said he couldn't move. This German soldier just didn't move. He just, with his eyes, he was watching my father. And my father didn't want to, you know, he just let him be. He didn't kill him. You know, he didn't want to kill him. He just let him be. And he doesn't know if the soldier made it or not, but and then another time he said they were somewhere where there were Germans approaching them, and instead of my father shooting them dead, he just you know, I guess they call it stitched the ground in front of the soldiers that were approaching him. Instead of killing them, he just kind of let them know that you know, that he was there. And so he then took those soldiers prisoner instead of, he could have just killed them. But he chose to, there's, you know, a few times, you know, through the stories where he just showed mercy. They were, in an area where they were pinned down. They were in a foxhole. They were pinned down because there were Germans all in front of them. And so they were pinned down. They couldn't get out of this foxhole. And so, you know, they were keeping their head down, and he was with a couple guys, and they were yelling, get down, you know, there's Germans. And the one guy next to him said, where? And picked his head up and boom, got shot right in his head. Fell dead right next to my dad. And then the other guy, I don't remember how he was killed, but he was also killed. And I think he fell on top of my father. So he was in this hole alone because everyone else was dead, and I'm not sure how many other men were around him, but they were all dead but my father. And so he had to lay there, not much room, of course, in this little ditch, this little foxhole that they had dug. And they were still shooting over his head, over his head, over his head. And there were many casualties in front of where my father was lying. And the Germans, after I don't know how long, he said he must have laid there for at least 4 hours or so. They were just they thought everyone was dead. So they were casually going through the soldiers laying on the grounds and just kind of looking through their pockets. And they were relaxing, talking, and having a cigarette and just, And so my father, I guess he could just barely see a little bit of what they were doing. So after about 4 hours or so, he thought, okay, they're gradually coming towards me. I have to do something or they're going to find me alive and then they're going to kill me. So he said he kind of waited for his opportunity. And when he saw that they were really relaxed and just not really looking his way, he just shot up and just ran. And of course they saw him, so then they again started shooting at him, and he says the bullets were just flying all over by his head and all over next to him, and thank God for some reason he wasn't hit. He rolled down this big hill, as he was running away. He rolled down this big hill and got behind a tree and was ready because he figured that they were going to follow him, ready with his gun. And I don't know how long he waited there. He said at least another half an hour or more, and no one came. So he thought, okay, well, I have to go back. To camp. And so he made his way back, a few hours walking, a few hours back to camp. And when he walked in, his sergeant said, "John, we thought you were dead. We thought everyone was gone," but he made it back. So that was amazing, amazing. And I didn't hear these stories until I was older, until I was an adult. He never really talked about it when we were children growing up. And then, like he mentioned, my son would come and he had his medals in a little cardboard box in a dresser drawer in their bedroom. And my son would find them, and then he would start to talk about it a little bit more, with us. And I think, like I know from my mother, he never talked about anything for the first 10 years of their marriage. She never knew any of what he went through, what he experienced. So it wasn't until we were older and the grandchildren started coming around and asking questions and that he started talking about the stories, and that's when I started hearing them. And that's actually when, it was probably better for us to hear it because I could appreciate and understand what he actually went through. Yeah.
Why do you think he kept it to himself for so long?
I think because it was probably so hard to digest, and no one can understand. Because unless you're there and you see these things and you experience it, nobody can understand. Civilian life is so different. The horrors of war, nobody can imagine, or relate to it. Nobody can relate to it. So even if you did tell your story, nobody would be able to understand it. So, I guess you just keep it to yourself. So I saw this in the paper about 10 years ago. Another World War II veteran had been awarded this medal. There were certain requirements that you had to have been in either, I think it was the Normandy invasion, the southern France invasion, and some other particulars that were required to be considered for this award. And so I thought, I thought to myself, maybe Dad would be able to get this. I know he was in the southern France invasion. Maybe we should look into this. Anyway, that was 10 years ago. And I tried to contact the people that, were listed in the article in the paper. And for some reason, they were no longer the correct contacts, and it just kind of fell flat, and it never happened. And then I remember a few years after that I tried again, and then I was on a phone conversation with my son within the last year, and I was talking about it, and he said, let me look into it. He said, yeah, Pa should definitely, be able to get that. And so he started looking into it, and he knows all about my father, all about where he fought, the battles he was in, the villages, the towns, everywhere he was. He has such a keen interest in all of it, which is why, my father said, he gave him his medals. My son actually built that frame for those medals and put all the medals, instead of a cardboard box, into that frame, to preserve them. And so anyway, my son looked into it. He had all the particulars that they required. He submitted everything, and then it takes a good 6 months or so, and it was about 8 months, and then we finally got word within the last few weeks that yes, he was going to be awarded the French Legion of Honor. So, well, I think it's satisfying in a way that the country that he helped liberate is recognizing, what he did, and it's so typical of my father to say, and it's not just for himself, it's for all the men that fought with him. That's so typical of my dad. But so yeah, I think it's nice that it's satisfying that not only is the United States recognizing, his service, but this foreign country who, like I say, he helped liberate, is recognizing his service. I just think it's very satisfying.